lines basically on this stick. So this increases your chances of success when you're waiting for bark slippage. Any other comments? You want to try and demonstrate?
I just wanted to say something about when you collect sign wood. I personally like Northern Spy 2 or Rome. I think you.
Is that right?
Yep. It's really supple. It's good to work with. You get really nice long pieces. And mice tend to stay away from Rome, from your little bit bitterer woods, and that being Rome. But the other thing about Rome, it's got this nice curvature to it. You can find this a lot easier in Rome, and this it really works well when you're pegging down and you've got to go over a hump or something. You've got a natural little arch curve here. You don't have to force it, because I like to keep it away a little bit from the tree, so as this grows, first couple years it doesn't pull out as the sign would grow. So you got a little bit of a curve, and Rome works really well for that.
Hey, Ron, why don't you talk a little bit about either tacking or nailing that graft in, and then about dressings.
We can do that, I think, better when we go out there, don't you think?
Let's have Ron.
You want to do it here? Okay, I got one other thing that I wanted to make sure. I was talking about slope cuts and that sort of thing. I want to make sure you understand how important it is you have a really sharp knife. If you don't have a sharp knife, remember those wavy cuts I was telling you that can happen? Okay, a dull knife will get you the wavy cuts. So it has to be a really sharp knife. How do you know? Well, first of all, you can use your regular stones for sharpening. Remember that these grafting knives have edge on one side only. Flat on one side, edge on the other. That's what I meant when I said you can be right-handed or left-handed, because the edge bevels in one direction only, okay? So what you're going to do is for example, I've got one here. This is left-handed. So when I'm sharpening, I'm making sure that when you get the knife, it has what's called a commercial edge, which is really narrow. What you have to do is make that a flat, wide edge. It's probably about a 1/16 inch in width. And you're going to draw it right across this stone constantly until you can take out that commercial edge. So do not try to graft with a commercial edge. You have to make your own, and it's going to be wider. So that means it's a flat angle, and it's the same one, same angle every time you go across the stone. And then the back side is going to be flat. Now, once I've got that, then I can use what's called the Arkansas wet, or some people use leather, to sharpen that further. And I'll keep on going that, and that'll hone it down. Once I get that, then the next thing is to test whether or not it's ready. So how do you test it? The easiest way is to take a newspaper. I've got a good, fine state news from Michigan State University, which always works great, especially the sports page. Okay? So what you're going to do to be able to tell whether or not it's sharp enough is that when I go right around the edge, right on the top of this newspaper, it'll slice right through just like a razor. And you don't see any feathering of the paper. This is really key. You think it's not? It is. You're going to take and cut so it'll come down. Try to miss your fingers. Good idea. Okay? Then make that comparison with a dull knife. Now I've got these taped up at the end, so I know for sure that these are the ones I haven't sharpened yet. Okay? And when you do that with a dull knife, or when you first get started, do the same thing. Come straight down, and you can see that it has real trouble. It won't slice. It'll basically tear the paper. And right now I can't even get it started. It's so dull. There, I got it started, but then it tears. So this is a really good way to determine and indicate whether or not your knife is sharp enough and ready for grafting. Okay? Do you use anything like that? No?
The paper?
Yeah.
No.
No. I just think
I just keep them sharp.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, I'm used to working with people who've never done this before. Okay? So, the one last thing I noticed is I saw a knife here. It's a Felco. Do you have it? No, there was a Felco here. Yeah, there we go. So there are different types of grafting knives, budding knives. This is a classic budding knife here. You can use it for grafting, but let's see, I don't think that's going to come up. Anyway, it has, you can see it has a little bit of an ear right here. That's used in tea budding, where you actually use that ear for flipping that flap out on the bark. So that's built specifically for tea budding. Okay? whereas this is built specifically for grafting. So that's wanted to make sure you understood there's all kinds of grafting knives out there. These are made by Tina. This is Victorinox. Now Falco put their name on it. So questions about knives, sign wood, slow cuts?
Let's have Robbie and
Yeah, let's
look
do
at
that.
questions again.
Are we too late to get Signwood, Robbie?
No, I just collected actually some of this from Rome yesterday. So Rome's not moving, wine saps, no one has.
You're
so
getting
it-
there. Your window is about to close. I would say probably a week maybe.
Yeah, and yeah, it's another thing I wanted to
Or
say
go
too.
north. Go up where Nikki is. And Emily. And
She'll
go-
give you some homemade cider.
Yeah, it gets some homemade cider while you're at it. But go north because you know for sure that stuff is still dormant, right? Just like you guys are still dormant up there. Yeah, it's cold.
If you
Still
have any suckers coming up from the ground,
Yep.
that's your best graft right there.
Yep.
The suckers coming up off that rootstock, I know a lot of guys trim those back or they'll get too big, you can't use them, but it's important that you know it's gotta be 1-year-old wood.
Yep.
You know, this is all 1-year growth, but those suckers coming up from the ground, you just take those, graft them into your tree, and that is, I think that's your best grafting wood right there.
All the people here that know Robbie know that we're very fortunate to have Robbie
Absolutely.
here in this area. She's used all across eastern United States, probably even in Canada.
Not yet, I'm hoping.
Okay.
You're gonna take me there, weren't you?
Yeah, I will. So I'm going to turn it over to Robbie. She's going to explain her techniques and answer questions, and then she's also going to talk about the grafting compounds. Robbie.
You know, one thing I want to say is, a lot of you guys may not know, but Alpha Shea, how many people knew Alpha Shea? I asked Phil if I could say something real quick. He passed away last October. And, yep, and he is the reason that I know a little bit about this, was because he was very patient with me, and I had a great mentor. But the thing is, I don't think we realize what we have, and one of the reasons he loved coming up here is because he loved working with people like Phil, Tomies, my dad. He said many, many, many times that this area was one of the best areas, not outside of, you know, beauty. He loved working with the Fruit Ridge growers, and I think that we should never take for granted people like Nikki, Bob, Ron, Phil, Amy, because we have a world of knowledge, and he recognized that. And one thing he also said was, the people up here down south, and they don't have the family farms that are going, that are continuing. And on the ridge, he was really impressed with that. So just, I just wanted to say that about Phil, Al. He was a man of many traits also.
He's on our video over there.
Yep.
And we'll play that later.
Ron does a little bit different technique than I do, in the sense of, he was telling me he likes to, when he plants a rootstock, he likes to cut it first and then plant it. I just learned, the way I learned is it's worked, and so that's what I do. I make the bottom cut first, and like I said earlier, can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, I got a lot of my dad in me, and this is one of them. You want to make sure that's clean. I carry a wire brush with me. So if you have to dig away to graft underneath, you want to dig that away, give it a couple days, and then you're going to want to make sure you go through and brush any of that dirt or anything off, because I think Ron mentioned you want to make sure that when you open that up, you slip that down in and that it's clean. A lot of times if you don't brush it, you make that cut, and you're making your cut on the sign wood here, you stick it down in, inevitably dirt ends goes down. It just happens. So I always wire brush it. I know it takes a little bit more time, but if you want to do this quick, then you should have somebody else do it, because that's the biggest thing, is just to be patient. But I make my bottom cut, make it nice and long, and I do the same thing.
You notice this is a professional who still uses the draw this way. So have you ever seen people who go that way like that?
Just on videos.
Yes.
Yep. And you can, two things, you either pull, one little key, and this is something I just learned from doing it many times, is I always start on the back side of a bud. So you're not pulling through a bud, because what happens, you get to that bud and all of a sudden you stop. So if you can start on the back side of the bud and pull it through, it makes the cut that much easier. But I go ahead and put it down, peg it in below, and then I just score this a little bit above the, let's say I just peg this in on, down here. And then I kind of eye it, find a good match here. Thanks, Phil. I put the brad in down below here, and I don't put it in all the way. I just put it in about 3/4 away. And then I come up and I find the spot, let's say right here, and I line it up, and then just make a little score on the back. And because you've already got this pegged in, and then I pull it back and I come back up and gonna make the top cut. And so you're placing this in, and then under that flap, this again, the bark's not gonna slip. Let's pretend it doesn't.
Yeah, just push
Right.
it in there.
Yep, so you're gonna take this very carefully, slip it up under there, and then again, I like to leave a little bit, I keep my fingers right here, and then I'll go ahead and I'll peg that on top with a little brad.
Yeah, it's a 1 inch by 18 gauge
Yep.
or 3/4 inch by 18.
3/4 by, yep.
Yep, I've got some more.
And the thing is when you go to pound in it, I use a nail set to make those last couple pounds, because you don't want to damage, you don't want to be pounding into that and in any way damaging the cambium on that cut piece on top or the bottom. So I just use, I think I have them. I have a couple different sizes here that I use, a nail set, and then I just tap them in, and these are, actually a couple of these are L's that his daughter gave me years ago, but there's 2 different sizes, and depending on the size of the nail set they use and driving that in. That just helps prevent that cambium from getting smashed, or your finger.
What if it's a little tree?
If it's a little tree, I agree with Ron. It's not even, don't even attempt it. The one thing, if it's a little tree, this is somewhat stable. You get a little tree and you're trying to pound it in. I use electrical tape on anything that's 1.5 inches and bigger. Those little trees, they don't have the root structure that's holding it in there firmly, and you go to try and pound it in, and it wobbles all over the place. You almost see somebody on the other side holding the tree or with their foot up against it.
On 1-year-old and 2-year-olds, if I'm doing the wedge type in arch, I'll use this budding tape, grafting tape that you can purchase. It allows oxygen to move through but keep moisture in. And you can take a strip off, and basically you're going to treat it just as if it was a bud. So you're going to go straight around and keep wrapping. I'll try to see if we can do that out there. And then you go underneath so that you'll trap moisture in underneath where you can get some air. That seems to work pretty well because a lot of times you really can't put a nail in to a 1 or 2-year-old tree, and that's the problem. It'll fracture that tree. And
I've used electrical tape.
Electrical tape works great.
You got to make sure, though, you
Electrical tape
come back
works really
through
good.
and cut that the next year, because
Yeah.
that can constrict in.
But this type of material that butters
Stretches.
use really stretches. So and this is nice and wide too. In fact, I think I got this from Hilltop Nursery years ago.
I think
Still have it.
Dave carries that
So,
tape.
do you carry
Dave
that?
carries,
Okay.
yeah.
I saw Wanda in here somewhere.
Where you're at.
So does anybody have any questions about, when I talk about pegging, I just mean nailing it down in
Yeah.
and up and above.
Nail the top and the bottom, or just?
I nail the bottom first, and then I nail the top end, yeah. You want to make sure that that's tight up against, Ron was talking about if you can't use a nail, to either use this, I use the electrical tape on some small stuff.
Robbie, how big do the ground suckers have to be? So if you
At least 1/8 of an inch. At least 1/8 of an inch. I'd like to see them at least 1/4 inch. Or between 1/8 and 1/4,
For what? What was the question?
how big a ground sucker has to be.
Yeah.
But then again, you have to make sure, I was up at Bill Lentz's and he had a whole bunch of, Bud 9, for some reason, mice just like this Bud 9. But not only did the mice girdle all of 1,500 of his sweet tangos, they also got into all the Bud 9 rootstock coming up too, and so it was a mess. We planted rootstock alongside, and that's what Phil has here.
So let's, oh, this you talking about.
A tree like this is probably, once you get down below the, here's the union here, you don't have anything substantial to graft to. I mean, you can, you'll see out there where we dug away, we do, but a lot of times you don't have anything viable down here. So an option is to plant a rootstock, and this is called inner arching. We would plant it, and I like to go with the rows because of herbicide program implements. So if you go north and south with the tree, you plant it down deep enough to where it's, you know, where you want to have it stable in there. And I like to have them planted about a week or 5 days before, just so they get a little bit of time to take root. And then I would come in and again find my spot and just line it here, pull that away, and match this up right here. I'm going to make a cut there, pull it up, score that back side, and then again, very carefully stick that up under. You want to make sure you give yourself enough room that all of a sudden you realize, wow, my cut's up here. Actually, I would come, you know, you try to stay as low as you can here, so I come right up here. And all of a sudden you've made your cut and you realize, or else you don't make a good cut and you go to cut again. So now you're trying to pull the rootstock out, and pretty soon the roots are showing in the ground and you've got to tree this. And so that's an issue. You just want to make sure when you get it up under there, here, that you're careful that it doesn't snap, and you stick it up in there, put a little tack or a little brad, which that's what these are, this or electrical tape.
So I noticed you use a double slot on your knife on the stock, is that right?
I'm sorry, what?
On your stock, you're making a single cut, or you're making a double on both sides?
Nope, I'm just making a single. I think
okay.
I scored that backside.
Because I know people, in
Some
fact,
people would
my
do-
dad is the one that taught me how to in-arch with
They'll
a
do
double
this.
slot, and it's just like your bark graft, where you make the same width as the sign, and you're going to go underneath, and then the flap on top will come on over. But I noticed that you do a lot of the single. I've done it, and then also if you take a look at if you Google bridge grafting, you'll see there's a guy out of Washington State that did some work, and he did a really nice job of getting a camera together and showing how he does bridge grafting. So, and it's like about a 5-minute long, but it's very nicely done. And he uses the single slot. I had a question for you though. If you're say you're bridge grafting and you're down here at soil line or below, dig soil around it, do you think that you could get away with not having to put graft compound on if you just mound soil up over it after you tacked it in?
You know, I personally wouldn't do that because
Yeah.
you've got, if you're mounding soil up,
Yeah.
it's not to say dirt will get up in there.
Yeah.
And
Well, the reason why I asked that is I've done hundreds of field grafts in grapes, which are even easier than apple to do grafting with. And we'll actually mound soil up over that cleft graft, and that soil basically acts as that grafting compound to hold moisture in so you don't get drying, and at the same time provide some oxygen coming in. And I just wondered if you ever had done that before. Wasn't sure.
yeah, the reason partly for that is I don't bury it back over
Yeah.
right away. You let that wax time to, but you know, just to make sure that dirt doesn't get up
Okay.
in there.
Why don't you talk about the compounds?
The compound?
Yeah, because you've got, there's a graft seal, and I know there are waxes that you can, in fact, I think, Dave, you brought some wax with you.
This
am I
is it right
correct?
here. This is it. Yep.
This is the wax, okay, because I saw you with a tub of something, that's why I've got a tub. No, that's tree coat there.
This
Well,
is tree coat here.
Yeah, I have some stuff in my lab that is a wax like this. So what do you think is better, and what do you think works better for you when comparing a tree wound compound like this, which is a black asphalt material,
Petroleum-based.
versus, and petroleum-based versus the wax.
Well, this has been a little bit of conversation between Dave and I. And I was able to talk to Mike Argo. He's the largest grafter out in Washington State, I mean, I'm a peon. Compared to him, he does millions every year, but he has a crew of 15. He likes Doc Farwell's, and actually he's in the process of developing his own. And I talked to him at length, and he likes this stuff because this stuff tends to crack. You gotta go over it. But I thin mine down to make it like a thick milkshakey and put it on thin. Then you don't get that cracking as much. The other thing he said about a 4-hour drying period. The thing we gotta remember is they are a totally different climate. I'm not even using this film. They're a totally different climate. He said they get 7 inches of rain annual. Most of that's in snow. So he tends to like this, but also what he does on big trees where you have big gaps, he'll take, he's developed his own putty. It's a pliable little putty where he puts at the corners. And now we're talking strictly top work here. So when you cut this away on a bigger piece of sign wood, if you stick down there, you have a big gap. So what happens is moisture can get down in there if it rains and stuff. He used to use this, he uses this strictly. Now, drying time is 4 hours, but if we have good drying time, that's all you need is 4 hours with this too. I think that he said also because of this is more favorable and kinder to the cambium than this because it gets so hot out this. This can burn, actually, he said, the cambium. We really don't have that problem here because we don't get the heat, the sunlight and the heating hours that they do. But he said he just has found that this is easier. He said if you use the putty, I thought Dave had some at one time, but I know if you go into A.M. Leonard or one of those, they have little bricks of it. I've seen it. Or if you go online, you can find little, they come in little like butter, pound butter. Looks like butter, but he said he'll use that and this on bigger stuff, but also he said you can use latex paint. I don't know if we can get away with that here. He'll just put that putty around those holes and then just latex paint. But
it won't hold the moisture.
Right, but we have an issue with more moisture in the ground, and more rain here annually than in the spring too. But if you apply this, it does have to be rechecked. But you know, if we have nice sunny days, I'll send my waxer back through. They'll check it, and you know, they're just checking to make sure that everything is sealed around their well. But I also take electrical tape and tape that after I make the top. When I top graft here,
Instead of masking tape, Robbie?
I don't, you know.
Where do you cut your stuff with?
I'm sorry?
Where do you cut your grafting wax with?
I apply it with